Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Newburyport School Committee for Monday, June 4th, 2018. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Decanter?
Here.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Menon?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. Hockheiser?
Here.
Mr. Reardon?
Here.
And Mr. Callahan?
Here.
All present.
Thank you so much. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And for a moment, I'm going to turn this over to Steve Cole, who would like us to remember a great leader in our school district who passed this past week.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. I respectfully ask to speak in remembrance of Mr. Bob Welch, who passed away on May 29th, surrounded by his loving family. He was 84 years old. In 1959, Mr. Welch came to Newburyport High School as a science teacher after earning his Bachelor of Science degree at Boston University. Within 2 years, he became the physical education director of all public schools. While earning his Master of Education degree at BU, he provided exceptional leadership as a teacher, coach, and administrator. He pioneered many of the advancements in the physical education and health curriculum. At the time, President Kennedy and President Lyndon B. Johnson's initiatives inspired his efforts with the President Council on Physical Fitness and Presidential Physical Fitness Award. Mr. Welch's initiatives and accomplishments were unique. They included a curriculum organized around Project Adventure, which promoted adventure and experiential learning as a catalyst for positive and lasting growth. He fostered outdoor education, recreational lifetime sports, lifetime fitness and health, organized the Boys Leaders Club, and was the director of citywide intramural sports. He expected a lot of his staff, and they delivered with a commitment and dedication to work with students outside of the classroom and away from campus. Mr. Welch established the first tennis program, NHS. He coached tennis, football, baseball, and basketball, and was named Coach of the Year multiple times. The 2003 NHS Wall of Fame honoree, the Fitness Center at NHS, is named after him. Mr. Welch led by example and made tremendous contributions to education and athletics. He taught valuable life lessons to generations of students. Through his guidance and support, he not only inspired you, he looked to provide you the opportunity to succeed at something that you may have been reluctant to try. May we have a moment of silence for Mr. Bob Welch.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you again. We are opening our public comment segment. If anybody who has joined us tonight has anything they would like to share with the school committee, we'd ask you to step up. There isn't a microphone set up, but just come up, and if you could give us your address so that we can match your comments to who you are.
Sure, okay. Good evening, my name is Betsy Shakespeare. I live at 24 Margot Street, and I'm just following up tonight. 2 weeks ago at the last school committee meeting, the school committee mentioned they would be in support of writing a letter to the chairwoman of the Ways and Means Committee. So I'm just following up to see if a letter was written, and I also brought a copy of one that was sent from one of the state representatives. I'm hoping that if the letter is submitted, if we could get a copy of that.
Sure.
Can you give up?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll just submit this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional comments? Our Newburyport High School student representative is not here tonight. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any warrants?
Yes, we have 3 warrants. I move that the following named bills and payrolls to the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of of $40,131.68 be approved to the city auditor to make payment and deduct the funds from the school's account. There is a conflict with the mayor.
Thank you.
Still second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
President?
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $81,120.53 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And the last warrant, by no means the least, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $231,436.12 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a set of minutes from the 5/21/18 business meeting. Do I have a motion to accept?
I move the acceptance of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. A second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Reardon. Any changes, any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good. I turn this next section over to the superintendent.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to invite Christina Gentili and Emily Russin to come up, and they are going to be presenting on our language-based service progression. Do you want us to sit back? That would be great. I'm going to move. Okay, are we good? I know.
Is that okay? Everybody can see that all right?
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, school committee, for having us, and thank you, parents. It's really exciting to see so many parents here. This is work that Emily and I are really excited about sharing. We're really looking forward to collaborating with you. The purpose of this is to provide an overview of meeting the needs of our most at-risk students in reading. We received some questions from you, thank you so much, on Friday afternoon. And we obviously have incorporated as much as we were able to answers to those questions, but at the same time, I think we need to recognize that those questions were incredibly comprehensive. The amount of work that you all put into that is just astounding to me. And I think that it's a great jumping off point. So you'll see there are some references to your questions, but they will not all be addressed with that level of specificity. And we're also always happy to meet with any group of parents outside of this forum. That's something that Emily and I really welcome the opportunity to do. Some of you may have questions, obviously, that are very specific to your child's services, and we would encourage you to ask us questions offline about those types of things, or to reach out to your school-based team.
see behind me.
I know.
All right. Because we were asked to address our most at-risk students, we have to start with setting the context around what reading is. We can't have that conversation without acknowledging how sophisticated the task of learning to read is. So in order to read, students need to lift the words off the page and they need to comprehend. And within both of those strands are extra strings, if you will, of this rope. Under word recognition, you can see phonological awareness. That's the ability to identify discrete sounds and words. Decoding, which is the alphabetic principle, etc., and sight recognition of words. In language comprehension, we build background knowledge, access vocabulary, access syntax and semantics to build meaning. We use verbal reasoning, and we use our background knowledge and literacy knowledge. One must build those skills automatically and increasingly automatically until that becomes so automatic that all of them can be accessed in less than a second. To build those skills, we work at a very sophisticated level of instruction. Okay. Here is an oversimplified picture of the brain to make the point that almost every human learns to speak. Speech is a natural part of being human. Reading is not. There is no one center in the brain assigned to reading. Reading is human invented, and therefore the inability to read is not something wrong with the brain. In order to read, the brain builds what might be referred to as a circuit, a very efficient circuit, that connects to these different areas in the brain so efficiently that for those of us that read easily, we don't even think of it as an effort. When an efficient circuit among these areas of the brain is made, reading is successful. Conversely, when any area of this circuit is not cooperating, reading breaks down. So to get a national view of reading, we can look at what we refer to as the National Report Card, NAEP. The nation's report card reports that 33% in the nation are below basic fourth grade reading, 25% below basic for 8th grade. These numbers have remained for the past 10 years. At the state level, we pride ourselves in leading the nation. We are ranked number 1 on the NAEP and number 1 on PISA, which is an international ranking. If we use our own report card in the state, which is MCAS, 49% of the students across Massachusetts met or exceeded reading expectations in grades 3 through 8 in 2017. In Newburyport, we met that average as well. But I don't think most of us in this room would be comfortable with that. We want to see higher numbers.
What makes learning to read even more difficult? Dyslexia or other learning disabilities? Cognitive, language deficits, or certain neurological profiles. For example, some students with attention deficit disorder or even types of seizure disorders can have can see reading impacted. Inadequate instruction, learning English as a second language, and limited experience with books, vocabulary, and background knowledge. Some of these obviously can overlap. We do have, for example, some students on the autism spectrum who also may have a learning disability in reading or another area. The other thing that I wanted to note here was that some of you may have some experience in filling out lots of forms at IEP meetings if your child has a specific learning disability. The reason for that is that some years ago, the state found that students were being over-identified as having specific learning disabilities. And mostly it was because of certain categories, and some of them are on here. So inadequate instruction, English language learners. And so the state solution to that was a lot of paperwork and to try to put some checks and balances in place for IEP teams to really say, okay, does this student truly have a specific learning disability? I think quite honestly, at the parent level, if I, were a parent filling out that paperwork, I would be confused and frustrated by that, because I don't think I think that can get lost in the translation. The other thing, I wanted to share a little bit of data around specific learning disabilities. It is the most common, it is the most common disability. In Newburyport, we have 17.9% of students on IEPs, grades K through 12. Of our students on IEPs, 110 have a specific learning disability, which is almost 23%. That doesn't mean a specific learning disability in reading, although my guess is that that would be the highest. Some students have a specific learning disability in math or written expression. And nationwide, about 1/3 of students on IEPs have a specific learning disability. So we're largely in line with that.
So just so that we have a common understanding around some of the characteristics of dyslexia and treatment, we are providing this next slide. Dyslexia is a variable, multifaceted learning disorder. It occurs along a continuum of reading ability and inability. Higher level thought processes such as reasoning and problem solving and comprehension and concept formation and critical thinking are not directly disrupted by dyslexia. But dyslexia is chronic and persistent. With the right supports, it can be highly successful. Students and adults that struggle with dyslexia struggle with phonemic awareness and/or rapid automatic naming. They may struggle with spelling. Typically, those who have dyslexia represent an unexpected difficulty in reading in an individual who has the intelligence of a much better reader. They're often slow readers, often poor spellers. Some are fast and creative thinkers with strong reasoning abilities. I just wanted to put out the myths around dyslexia. It's not about reading backwards. It's not about anything to have to do with vision. Research has shown that reading interventions are most successful in the youngest grades. The link at the top is,
Angela?
there it is,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It should connect to
let's see.
a very short video describing the brain. It's okay if there's no sound. Do you see the
Angela,
left
can you go to the
window?
tab at the top on the left?
Use 1 minute, up, upper left-hand corner. Sick. Yeah.
Just start it over. Do you mind starting it over? And expanding, yeah.
If I can get it back, I'm sorry, guys. Not being a very
Okay,
good
that's good.
computer operator here for you.
There we go, that's great, thank you. I think it's okay, because I think it's underneath. Thank you. Okay. So the parent group that came forward at the last school committee and reviewed again today that there is upcoming legislation likely to pass soon in the House and Senate, and that legislation is recommending early screening and evidence-based interventions for students with dyslexia. I wanted to showcase how we are already starting to meet those standards. for assessment to be valid, reliable, efficient, and norm reference. So what we mean by valid is the test tests what it says it's going to test. Reliable means I can give the test, you can give the test, we'll get the same results. Efficient means we're not going to take hours to give the test. Norm reference, we're going to compare it to those across the country that took similar tests. Those are the types of assessments with high standards and would represent what's referred to as a screening tool to identify red flags early in your education. What we have in place already in Newburyport in grades K to 3 are Dibble's Next subtests. We administer those in K through 3. Those subtests include screenings for phonemic awareness, phonics, letter naming, oral reading fluency, and we began implementing them school-wide in 2011. This fall, we're going to be adding a rapid automatic naming subtest for K to 3. The parent group also suggested that we add a family history to our parent surveys, which we just have to discuss, but I think that that's we love that recommendation. We know that dyslexia is strongly genetically linked, and having information that parents, of course, would voluntarily give us would help us identify risk factors in a student. At our upper grades, we administer the STAR 360 assessment that just began in 2015. And of course, we have more diagnostic tests, which many are familiar with within our special ed referral system.
We've put together some examples of evidence-based instruction and interventions that are already in place, as well as some a sense of timelines in terms of what we've added. This is not a comprehensive list, but it involves some that Emily and I kind of put our heads together and wanted to highlight. Emily will talk a little bit more about spell links in a minute. And SRSD is something that has been implemented for third through fifth grade for 2 years with, I understand, it's great success. We started implementing Keys to Literacy. Next year, that will be taking place in grades 6 through 8. We've had Wilson in place since 2013, and in the time that I've been here, I could have figured out the number of teachers who we have trained, and I'm happy to provide that information, but we have trained a number of teachers at every level and at every grade level in Wilson. There's been a great increase in that. We also have started using Seeing Stars for the past couple of years. Title I has been using Ravo. Language exclamation mark is something that we started using last year and with 6th and 7th grades, and next year we will be using that in grade 5. We started using LIPS as well. Read Naturally is something that has been in place for some time. Learning Ally is an online database of audiobooks that's read by a human voice where the speed can be controlled, the speed of the reading. And in the past year, it used to be only available to students with specific learning disabilities. In the past year, that's something that we've expanded access to for more students, to make that available to more students. And then we have ongoing PD. I don't know, did you want to mention anything about Title I?
Oh, just that we also have interventions within access of our general education students, K through 5, which include reading recovery, LLI, quick reads, phonics for reading, rewards, several other programs.
Kristen, if I could just ask a question. The second bullet, 2017 doesn't mean that that's when we stopped doing it.
No.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It was very successful and then we stopped it. Yeah, no.
Okay. I wanted to expand explanation of our word study program that was implemented in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. The program is called Spell Links, and it follows a connectionist model. A connectionist model hits on that image of the brain that I showed earlier, in that there's a reading circuit. And so it's not teaching to just one area of that circuit, but to all of them at the youngest grades. It's considered a 5-block connectionist model. It's based on current reading science research, including brain imaging studies, The structured literacy curriculum uses a connectionist word study approach to teaching reading and writing, employing multilinguistic and metalinguistic word study instruction. So that's just the ability to think and discuss language. This approach builds literacy with instructional methods and activities that develop, connect, and integrate the different processes and regions of the brain involved in effective reading and writing. With spellings, students develop specialized knowledge and skill in the 5 language blocks of word study, which include phonological awareness, orthographic knowledge, semantics, morphological knowledge, and mental orthographic images. At the same time, students engage and connect multiple language centers of the brain to establish and strengthen the vital neural functional connectivity that is needed for efficient reading and writing. Spellings is an explicit, systematic, cumulative, multisensory, structured literacy approach. It also has a unique program philosophy that provides many distinctive advantages for all kinds of learners. Unlike other programs, it begins each lesson series moving from speech to print, rather than starting with print. This is important as we discussed that speech is natural and an easier place for our brains to begin. Rather than building only from the bottom up, it teaches for each area of the brain in all grades, which is especially important in activating and drawing explicit attention to words. It teaches strategies that can be used in transferring word study to reading and writing throughout the day, following a lesson routine of say, hear, write, and read. Spellings meets and exceeds the recommendations of the International Dyslexia Association for an effective reading and language intervention program.
Some questions were included in the parent submission about how certain programs are recommended, who recommends them, and I've tried to address that very generally. Any services are always recommended by the IEP team. The IEP team looks at data, including work samples. Sometimes an IEP team will recommend additional testing, especially if it's been a while since special education testing has taken place. Oftentimes, we'll have teachers observe students when we're considering a different service delivery model. For every student, the team is legally required to consider what's called the least restrictive environment. That can look very different based on different types of student profiles. I've listed there where it says continuum of services from what's considered to be least restrictive, which is consultation, to most restrictive, which is one-on-one services outside of the general education setting. Also, some questions were put forth about class size and student-teacher ratio. Frankly, it's impossible for me to answer that question globally. We have many students in the district who require one-on-one services outside of the general education classroom because that's what they need to make progress. It really completely depends on student needs, student profile. We always try to look at peer grouping and academic levels when we're putting students together. I feel very strongly that it makes no sense whatsoever to have a student with, X ability in reading, placed with a student where there's a significant gap in terms of their reading ability. That just is not going to be effective instruction. In terms of our group sizes, we did have our coordinated program review recently, and that report has not come out yet, but our evaluator from the Department of Education was able to see all of our group sizes, and she did remark that we have incredibly small group sizes across the district in general. And in terms of what's available from grade to grade or school to school, every year we have students with different needs. We're a relatively small district, so it may be the case that one year we have a cohort or even one student in the 6th grade, for example, who needs small group math, but the next year that may not be the case. So we look at that on a year-to-year basis, and we start doing that kind of late winter, early spring of the year before. I wanted to put some information together about what is a language-based program. I won't read this all to you, but there's a difference between language-based instruction and a language-based program. Language-based instruction is something that really all students benefit from. It's an overarching term, it's a teaching approach. I don't think that it's out of line for me to say that every single one of our classrooms uses language-based instruction, regardless of whether it's a general education classroom or a substantially separate classroom. A language-based program, I've underlined certain keywords in here. A language-based program takes this one step beyond. A program, in terms of special education sort of lingo, it's not a specific location of services. It does not even necessarily mean a substantially separate location for services. Language-based programs need to be flexible and responsive to individual student needs. And an example of that is that at our middle school language-based cohort, we had some students who may start off the year and they may require a small group setting for English language arts and for social studies. As the school year goes on and we see their skills begin to improve and their independence increase, there can be a discussion about those students going into general education social studies. Does that mean that they're not in a language-based program anymore just because now they're in gen ed social studies? No. So it needs to be responsive to where the student is at. Emily and I wanted to highlight one example of what we have been working on, along with Tim and Lisa from the NOC and many teachers at the NOC who, all deserve a lot of credit. And over the past couple years, we have been really focusing on our language-based programming. We have assembled a leadership group that has included our speech and language pathologist, our special education teacher, Tim Mahan, Tara Ellis, who's here, myself, and Emily. And we've been meeting regularly to look at individual student needs, to look at IEPs, to discuss the vision. We've done site visits to other districts. We've articulated criteria. We've increased personnel, which I'll get to in a minute. We've updated the curriculum. So I had shown in a prior slide that we are using the language exclamation mark. We've modified scheduling, and we continue to monitor and make changes. Our collaboration has led us to realize that we do need to better align services across our schools and working to build more consistency as well as intensity. We're planning, as I mentioned before, to expand the use of language to 5th through 8th grade next year, and to think about more systematic programming in our elementary grades. So one example of that is that a model that we are considering using is combining RAVO, which is another program, with Wilson for certain students. Yep.
Oh, you talked about the first one.
Yeah. So this is not a comprehensive list of all of the special education personnel that have been added across the district for reading. This is more of a focus on the NOC. I also wanted to add a footnote that, and we've talked about this before, the district overall has added a number of interventionist positions over the past years. So I hope that I got this right, because even my basic math can be challenging for me, but I added up that the NOC has added 1.5 special education teachers, and that the focus on that really has been reading. We've always had an assistive technology, or for quite some time, we've always had an assistive technology consultation in place, but one thing that has changed is that we have created a way for any teacher to sign up to have that consultation time. So it used to be that the consultant would come in and really only work with a teacher if they had a student in their classroom who had that on their IEP. And now we're trying to kind of broaden that a little bit. We have had ongoing consultation this year with Stephanie Gottwald. Do you want to describe her role?
Her bio is in your packet. She's considered an expert in the field of dyslexia and lives in Amesbury, and she had contacted me and originally saying she'd be willing to work with us. And her long, extensive work is out of Tufts, where she worked closely with Marianne Wolf, who's considered an international guru in dyslexia. So our work with her helps us feel like, we're well-informed in terms of next steps for the district.
Can you describe what does that work? What?
Her role in consultation,
Yeah.
right now, it's very beginning. This is her first year working with us, so we've actually been sharing with her not just our needs for our most severely disabled students, but also the needs of all of our students, so to strengthen all the tiers of instruction that we offer. So she'll meet, right now at this point, she's just meeting with us at a leadership level as we determine next steps.
And looking at data as well.
Right, and looking at data together, yes.
Angela, if you want to go to the next slide, I can help you.
Okay, just stop there for a sec.
Yeah.
So this is a writing sample of a 7th grade student who began in our revised language-based programming this year. We have parent permission to share it. And you can see it's, it's very simple and not necessarily what we would expect it's not at all what we would expect for grade level 7th grade. That was September of this year.
Just scroll down the document.
And this is independent work without teacher or parent help. This is her work this past May, which was actually even out of her language-based setting. It was with in her social studies setting, which is language-based support.
Also independent.
Also independent, yes. So we were thrilled, she was thrilled, the parents are thrilled.
Yeah, Mom was very excited
and
that we were sharing it.
Yeah, we just wanted to, this is the type of work we know a student with the right instruction is capable of.
Emily, can you talk a little bit about the interventions that
That
got
led
her-
to this?
that led
So
to
this
that?
student would have been a part of the language exclamation point curriculum that was in a substantially separate setting, in a small group setting, and worked daily together for 45 to 90 minutes. That curriculum is comprehensive, so it's not just a writing curriculum, it's even at the middle school level, covers phonemic awareness and phonics, but it also then goes into vocabulary, it goes into grammar, fluency, and comprehension, as well as writing. It's research-based and systematic. All right, we can go back.
There you go.
Next again. Thank you. Okay. So since we implemented DIBELS school-wide in 2011 and 12, we've seen significant increases in our percentages of students meeting core, which is the 40th percentile of the standard, considered to mean students are on track for meeting future benchmarks. In that time, professional development and curriculum changes, as well as data analysis, led to increases of about 10% across the grades. First grade, beginning of year scores have increased by 40%. Second grade, beginning of year scores have increased by 12%. And on average, our K to 3 has moved from the 70s to the 80s in students achieving benchmark. We can be proactive rather than reactive to the likely upcoming legislation. We can set our goals higher. I think everyone in this room agrees that we can get from 80% to 90%. The goal of reaching 90% or higher of students achieving core benchmarks by third grade would take some crucial elements that must be considered. We need to be identifying dyslexia and other reading disabilities early, in grades K to 2. The research will support that. We need to develop a list of discrete reading benchmarks for each elementary grade. We already have plans to do this during summer work with Stephanie Gottwald. We need to provide ongoing professional development so that all teachers are knowledgeable about the science of reading and dyslexia and reading disabilities and be critical consumers of the programs in use. This will lead to strengthening our Tier 1. This work also has occurred in our district over years. We need to continue that work. We need to align and identify most intensive and appropriate interventions for those most at risk for reading failures in early grades. This would strengthen our Tier 3s and 4s. We need to implement cyclical professional development systematically. I'll expand on that in a moment. And we need to expand our literacy leadership team. About 3 years ago, our elementary principals, Christina, myself, our ELL director, and others were present as a leadership group, teachers. There were some teacher leaders in the group that met to partake in a leadership literacy training called Lectio, which is led by Noni Lasso out of Harvard. And there we did some strategic planning that resulted in specific goals for both of our elementary schools. And that group continues to meet, but we see the need to expand that group and expand the work of that group. The high cost of identifying later is well known by everyone in the room. There's a greater intensity of intervention often warranted if students are identified later. There are larger gaps between student performance and proficiency. Student self-esteem is often at risk, and we know that family frustration with the school system is apparent. When these factors do occur, it requires higher costs in personnel and curriculum, as well as putting the district at higher risk for requests for outplacement, which comes at considerable cost. All right, I'm going to outline in the next few slides what I would argue needs to be in place to get to 90%. These are all things that we have already done in this district. It's the systematic nature of constant application that would make this more intensive. So getting to 90%, students need explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, literature appreciation, and exposure to a variety of texts and writing. They need frequent, reliable, and efficient assessment that drives instruction. They need support throughout the process from skilled teachers. Getting to 90%, teachers need continual professional development to deliver high-quality literacy instruction. That professional development needs to be in the area of the science of teaching reading, refining strategies in the classroom, using assessments to inform instruction. And for those to take place, a positive school culture needs to be present. Where strong leadership is involved, there's full transparency and accountability so that teachers feel safe taking risks. Getting to 90%, the district needs a long-term commitment to prioritizing literacy excellence. That means allocating resources, time, personnel, consultation as needed. The district needs clear data-based goals that are revisited at the leadership level. And by leadership, I would include school committee, principals, directors, etc. Policy that sustains evidence-based literacy instruction and assessment. The district needs ongoing leadership support and training, structures and procedures to sustain literacy excellence, such as the literacy leadership team, and outreach and partnerships with families and community, including the recommendation of strengthening CPAC. Literacy is sometimes seen as an initiative, a part-time focus with other competing interests. What I'm arguing here is that literacy will always be a priority, as it needs to be an ongoing central focus in early education and beyond. We need to be thinking about, at the district level, what actions can be taken to assure and protect that focus. I mentioned earlier that we have taken steps in all of those aforementioned slides. throughout the years. So why aren't we at 90%? And why are some of our students not where they should be by middle school? That takes a systematic, planned redundancy in which leadership continually leads training, preparing for implementation, for annual review and scoring, going into data analysis, that the leadership team comes back together to review that data, sets goals going forward. Teachers are then informed and also analyzing that same data and making instructional decisions, then going towards other benchmarks in the year at fall, winter, and spring, and in between. You'll see in this cycle, absolutely the entire system is involved and informed about how to best teach reading, and it never ends. That is the way to sustain literacy growth. We look forward to follow-up conversations with the parent group. We know we did not touch on many of the questions, and we'd be happy to meet with you in a small group setting to go in more detail with the questions that are still in your mind. We also welcome broadening this conversation with the greater leadership team that is present here as well as in the schools. Thank you. Questions?
I got a question. Can I ask a question? I don't know if this is go ahead, Mary. You want to go first? Sorry.
It's okay, you didn't see my
No, I didn't. You were hidden.
You presented probably 12 different types of literacy curricula, turning, LIPS, RAVO, and all that. How do you decide which student, which class, which teachers, that's a broad range of curriculum.
So how do we decide which program to use with which student, and then also maybe which teachers to train?
Are they trained in all of these?
No, that's a really good question, and you can
That seems a little overwhelming.
Yes, absolutely, yes. I don't know that we have any teacher who's trained in all of these. So, in terms of how, and I'm speaking with my special education kind of hat on, and Emily can speak maybe more from the general education perspective. Some of these programs lend themselves to certain student profiles. So, for example, recently we had a student with some decoding deficits. We were not sure which program to use. We knew that he needed some pretty intensive intervention. So we did, there's something called the WIST, which is goes along with Wilson reading, and it's sort of a placement test, if you will, right, for Wilson. And the results of that really led us to realize, my gosh, he has so many skills. He really should not be in Wilson. He needs a different program. So sometimes it involves additional testing. And I'll say this too, sometimes we in the past, we have made assumptions that certain students maybe wouldn't be a good fit for Wilson, and I've been proven wrong with that. Years ago, for example, we had a student and we were concerned that Wilson wouldn't be a good fit, and we revisited it, and it was very successful for him. So it's something that a lot of times, we look at data to rely on that. I don't know what you want to.
The assessment, but also, yes, so each of these interventions addresses different aspects of reading, so it depends on where the breakdown for the student is.
Okay.
So we'd have to identify where their breakdown is and find the best match for them and for their age ability.
Could there be a blend of some of these
Yeah.
programs too?
Definitely, absolutely. And in terms of the teacher training, we try to look not even just every year, but continually look at which teachers and what sort of grade levels we need to shore things up. So, for example, a few years ago, we got a lot of teachers at the middle school trained in Wilson, because I don't even know if we had one person. That was a number of years ago, and that was an undertaking, because we realized that was a gap. So we try to look at that. The language exclamation mark there, I know
That selection occurred through data analysis, so we identified a need in certain groups of students, and that led to, we knew through our data analysis that we needed a comprehensive approach appropriate for secondary students that were about 2 years behind or more, and that led us to that intervention.
Thank you.
My question is kind of along those lines. So I saw all the interventions, which is great. So my question more is, are we on a regular basis looking at kind of how we're teaching foundational skills in those early grades? And so, we've got 18% of kids on IEP, so I don't know what that breakdown is for K2, but I know we've been kind of doing probably the same thing for a while. And so the things like Star 360, are we trying to maybe use that data now going forward to maybe address some of those things that might push us over the top or direct us towards maybe a more solid curriculum to?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. And that is why I presented so much on what else is needed and being done in the district for all students, because we know that with the strongest Tier 1 core instruction, we can prevent a lot of students needing intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So we have provided ongoing professional development in reading for our earliest grades, but what I suggest is that it needs to be more cohesive and tied to regular data analysis on an ongoing basis. Is that?
Yeah, I assume that's the reason why we were maybe going there, but
Yeah.
I just.
Our spellings curriculum was only implemented a few years ago, so that is a newer aspect.
Okay.
Mr. Decanter.
I have a couple of questions. One that I guess is just confusing me a little bit. We take a look at our MCAS scores at 48%. And then we turn around and talk about the fact that 48% are meeting or exceeding standards. Then we take a look at core. And we say we're 73%, I think was the lowest figure, you said average around 80%. So I guess I'm confused, is it 48% or 52% that is underperforming, or 20% that is underperforming? What is the difference
That's a
between
great
these
question.
measures?
So, how to explain? So, MCAS would be one of the highest standards that we could use in terms of as a student reading. Because at that level, they need to be reading at all standards. So comparing texts, comprehending at a high level for that grade. That is grade level reading. I mean, the purpose of reading is understanding and communicating about what we've read. We see that students performing at that level have met the 70th percentile or higher on DIBELS. Those percentages that I shared with you, that going to 80%, are students who have met the 40th percentile. That means that they can read fluently, but perhaps not at the rate that some of our highest readers can read. So there is a gap there. So I'm stating a goal 90%. If we raised it in percentile, we could say we want to go even higher. But that won't transfer to MCAS until students are so fluent that they can completely be released to their comprehension in their brain.
Okay. The second question I have is, you talked about the need of the support at the various levels that students need to reach that 90%. I take a look at all of these things that you enumerated here, and they make a lot of sense to me. And we do need to support them. And I guess what I am looking for, what I would like you to comment on, is how do your recommendations specifically tie to action plans in the strategic plan? Because that's where we're laying out this kind of growth over a period of time. Is there that connection, or is this sort of a set of goals unto themselves?
I think it could connect to our assessment strategy within our strategic plan. But reimagining teaching and learning, it could fit under as well. The plan doesn't specifically address content, and I think I'd like to see more specificity around reading.
I would too, because I think the plan is a great umbrella, and a lot of things can fit under those. Reimagining teaching and learning, for example, can be just about anything in the school district. And that's why I'm saying, what are the specific action plans that we're bringing in here and looking at to support these kinds of...
I love that you made that connection, and I think that that could be a really exciting thing for us to talk about as a leadership team to really, and the strategic plan is, as you said, it's an umbrella and it's designed to be flexible and to fit a number of different, I don't want to use the word initiative, this is more than that, but under it, and I think that I would love to follow up on that as a leadership team.
I know one of the things, Emily and I were on the Reinventing Teaching and Learning group, and one of the things we had talked about was moving away from the teacher-directed classroom, so where kids are involved in more discovery on their own, which essentially means they're reading for learning instead of listening or consuming, like they're going out actively finding information, reading it, thinking about maybe like a source like News ELA where they could find information at different Lexile levels so they can, and then they get that background information, obviously that helps the whole piece. And so when I think about reinvention and literacy, I guess that's what I'm thinking of. So you have teachers working very directly with some struggling readers in a classroom, and then kids who have that basic skills like Sean was talking about, you can move them into, they're on their own, they're in the library or they're reading, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That workshopping model.
I agree with you, Dave. I guess the point that I'm making is below that level of greater, a more student-centric process than that goal. We have various action plans in terms of things that, now getting down to the details that we're trying to implement and that we're supporting with the strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I was saying, what I'm questioning here is why we don't have some of these kinds of recommendations at that level of specificity. They fit under probably 2 or 3 of the umbrellas that we've set up of the strategies that we set up in the strategic plan. But unless we get down to this group of teachers and staff is working on this particular thing in support of the strategic plan that is related to this, I just see this as an opportunity to build in the continuity and consistency that was brought to the table as a requirement for us.
I do think it benefits us to have it in writing at a district level, whether that's in our strategic plan, amending it, or whether that's in policy or action plans at the district or school level.
Well, when you're asking for financial support from the school committee, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how does it tie to the strategic plan? And so that's why, it's the importance of when we go out to the community and say, this is what we're all about for the next 5 years. To be able to point to this as an area that needs support in that plan is important. And that's why I'm bringing up that point.
One of the things that jumped out at me in terms of this presentation, where I think that the leadership group and the teachers working together is really in coming up with a pretty definitive professional development plan of what that would look like, and whether it's based on the individual building levels or the strategies themselves, or the type of intervention that we want to train people in, and what that could look like. Because I think that ties directly to cost and also specifically where we want to go in order to achieve that 90%. So, that just sort of, I was thinking about what would that look like at Bresnahan? What would that look like at Mullen? What would that look like at the middle school, So,
Yes.
I think that's a definite tie-in.
Yeah.
If there are no more questions of the school committee, traditionally, we have to vote to suspend the rules to encourage people from the audience to have, if they have questions. It's just a suspension of our usual rules. Is there any interest in the school committee in doing that? So would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to suspend our rules and allow for public comment.
Second.
Questions? Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Are there people in the audience who have any questions for our folks here?
Come on, Tice, get up here. You can sit right there if you want.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday and school committee members. My name is Tice Tague, and I am currently 4th grader at the Mullen. I reside at 18 Collins Street in Newburyport. I am here to make a public comment on behalf of the 1 in 5 dyslexic students in Newburyport. All students have the right to learn to read without having to fail first. Let's put the right programs and assessments in place so kids like me don't have to fail or fall through the cracks. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to try to top that comment? Thank you very much. Thank you, and I would encourage the parents to continue to meet and have these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much,
For comprehension.
Emily, Christine. The next item on the agenda is the Newburyport High School Projector Bid Award, and I would turn this over to the superintendent to help us sort of frame both the conversation and a motion if there is one to be brought forward.
In your packet, you had the high school projector bids as well as the electric bids. You can see that there were 6 bids for the projectors, and there were 2 bids on the electric. The low bidder on the high school projector was, it says Connection, that's ConnectEd, for $87,821.54, which was far below what the original projections were, which I believe was at $125,000, and then the low bid in the electric came in at $25,060, and that was for Bass Electrical here in Newburyport. Those were the only 2 bids that came in.
So are those are the recommendations that you're making? So,
And just for a point of clarification, in the capital plan, there are additional, and let me just pull up my email for a minute to read it specifically. I just want to be clear, just so that you can understand this. Get to where I need to be. Okay, so in addition, there also are additional towers, desktops, laptops, Chromebooks, docking stations, and monitors that are also part of that. This is a combination of this money from the building projects for replacement of devices like this Surface Pro, which were in both Bresnahan and Knockmollen, in the building projects for both of those. There was $250,000 in Bresnahan and $250,000 in Knockmollen that can be used for these devices. The RFP for these original, for the additional laptops, Chromebooks, docks, monitors, all of that has not gone out for the RFP yet. All right, Dawn Skane is working on that and is almost ready to send that out. So this is very specific to the high school. So I just want to be clear on that. So these 2 things are for the high school.
So are these,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, you first.
And just for projectors,
That's what I
not
was-
for any of the other.
Correct,
That's what I was
just
gonna say.
projectors.
Superintendent, your 6 bids for the projectors, could you, it was $87,000 and what?
$87,821.54.
And who was that for?
That was for, it says Connection on here, it's ConnectEd, is
Okay,
Connect Education.
I just want to make sure.
And then, did you get the electrical?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Mr. Reardon.
So my question was that, but also I didn't have a chance to stop and check out. So these bids though are detailed, so you're able to compare, like, I mean,
Yes.
so, I mean, there's such a huge variance between the high and low. is it just different equipment that they were using?
You know, again.
Did it say that in the bid? Like,
The
did
bid
it
was
spell out
very-
exactly
It was
what?
very specific, yes. The bids are the bids. I mean, we have to go with what we have.
No, I was just
So-
curious, I was just,
And I agree with you. There's a huge variation from 87,000 up to 163.
So, again, just for point of clarification for me, the desire to replace desktops and monitors at the high school is not part of this?
Correct.
Okay.
It is in this, what I'm talking about, that has not gone out for RFP yet.
I would continue to get clarifying questions. I would also pass on this piece of information that we learned at Joint Ed, and that is that the capital improvement plan expects to come out of committee on Thursday and be voted on June 11th, which is before our next meeting. So essentially, we need to vote on this one way or the other tonight, or we won't get an opportunity to get a capital plan.
so is this coming out of, this isn't coming out of this is specific to the high school, so that 250 at the Breslin, the Mullen, that's
Not being touched.
not been touched?
No.
Okay, but the hope is you want to use that to replace
Down the road.
of the
Yes.
other things?
Yeah.
Okay, so but on the CIP that's going to be voted, that's hopefully where the money's going to come from for this, and it's a separate,
Yeah, they're also, I mean, what I can tell you is that in addition, there are items in terms of towers, monitors, desktops, Chromebooks, laptops, and docks that are for both, they include all of our schools for replacement at Bresnahan, at Knock, at Mullen, at the high school. So there are additional devices for all of our schools in this second RFP that
which
has not
hasn't gone out yet.
Yes.
And again, I don't want to sort of belabor the point before I get to Mr. Decanter's question. There's been a lot of conversation about this, and I just want to make sure that we are very clear about what our task is tonight. Mr. Decanter.
That's exactly my question. What are we approving? Are you just reporting to us on a process that's already included in the budget and has been included in the capital plan we approved? I'm a little confused of what it is that we're being asked to do.
Tonight, you are being asked to vote on the high school projector bid and the electric to go with that.
Do we
So we've already,
normally vote on bids that come, I know we do for certain things that are over a certain amount, and I think this is well below that.
No, this is
so-
over $100,000.
Thought we said 87.
It's 87 and then 25 for the electrical as well.
I'm sorry, all right.
So, and I do think that you have voted on.
we voted on what's in the capital
Right.
improvement, plan,
Correct.
right? So
And this was in the capital.
this is in it,
Yeah,
right?
this is
Okay.
in it. This is
So
in
we're
it.
just voting on, this is the bid we want to go with?
Specifically, yes.
Okay.
These two items, the projectors and the electric that goes with it.
I have a question about the electrical. There was an original estimate, I believe, that was like 16,000 for the electrical part.
And these are what the bids came in at.
It's like 10,000 more dollars is the thing, so that estimate was way off.
That's why they're estimates.
I don't want to be simple about this, but if we've already indicated to the city council that we support the capital plan, I'm still trying to wrap my hands around why we're taking another vote.
Because these are the bids, there were 5 bids that came in, this is the lowest bid, these are the 2 low bids, and we've been asked to approve for these bids so that they can sign
They
contracts.
can be awarded, they have
They
not
can
been
be
awarded.
They haven't been
can't be
awarded
awarded
yet.
yet. They haven't been awarded. You need to vote on them so that they can be awarded.
So we are voting on the specifics, even though we have already voted to approve what
Total
was an
funding.
estimate.
Yeah.
What is the difference then between the projectors came in under projection and the electrical came in over projection? Total cost of the package, what is the delta?
The total cost of those two?
Yeah.
I think think we're still saving about 25,000, right? Something like that?
Right around 20.
Around 25,000.
So we're
in
well below.
these, yeah,
Thank you.
in terms of what was projected.
So again, I don't remember the capital plan. In the capital plan that we approved, there was a figure for this, an estimated figure for this. And we're 25,000 below that figure?
Yes.
Is that okay?
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
How does that work with them? Will they just have to adjust that, and that's what they'll vote on? They'll vote on an adjusted number, or they'll just vote on the
They'll approve
product?
capital plan, because you
In
don't
full,
know, you still
okay.
have other bids going out, and they could be variable too.
Okay.
I mean, we had a $500,000 bid range on bids that came in for the in-street fountain. So you just never know.
Okay.
You know, in terms of how these bids are gonna come in, you know, especially when, you know, things involve, you know, outside contractors, we have to pay prevailing wage, which means everything is going to be higher than in the private sector, in the public sector. And it's really hard to predict in terms of, you know, where the bids are gonna come in. Bresnahan School came in 3 million under, and this is how we're using that extra money to be able to take care of some of the technology needs in the school district, so we're very fortunate in that regard.
And, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but if in fact the capital plan and the bids came in for this, the second part lower, that additional funding that they had
Would
approved.
just stay in that account.
Would just stay in that account, is that correct?
Yeah. But we're just trying to cover to be sure that we have enough funding, so we don't have to come back and do the vote again. Does that make sense?
Are we talking, I mean, is this apples to apples? I've dealt with CDW, so I know they're way overpriced in general for that type of thing, but that number is so huge between Connect Ed and CDW. It is the exact same equipments that's specified, like Projector A?
They all had the same bids, they all had the same information.
So it is the same?
Yes.
So the only thing they're gonna
They all
make,
had the
they're gonna
same
have a lower
information.
markup, or they're gonna have a lower, I don't even know what. I mean, that's just a huge number.
Could be a labor rate.
Labor for what? The labor is the electrical part.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's just shipping.
So it's just markup, right?
Just markup.
I mean,
We had the
can I
same
just,
thing during the computers when we were looking at for the school project.
should get a
The same
Brian
thing,
out.
they were all over the place.
Yeah.
can I, let me just reframe this as simplistically as I can, so even I can understand it. The difference between the two bids they are saying, we will provide you projectors that do what you're looking for. And if you get Consumer Reports, you know that you can get a projector that's really highly rated or a projector that's not so highly rated, not as reliable, but in theory does the same thing. Is that what that difference is, do you think? That we're getting a product that's...
I guess that was,
Because you specified the product.
Right, but there's nothing in the bid that specifies it's gotta have a reliability rate of
right. If we're
5
just-
years.
We're just asking for
2
a
years.
car that gets me from point A to point B, and somebody offers me a Ford and somebody offers me a Mercedes. They've both managed the job, but, you know, I guess that's what you're asking, Bruce, right? Like,
I think,
so
no,
what-
just, yeah.
Are we getting the same equipment for that much more money? Or are we getting
Our IT department came up with this specifications for the bid.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what's there. All of these companies receive the same information.
I understand.
This is what we
Yeah,
expect.
no, I think,
So,
yeah,
I can't,
So
I mean, I
is
can't
this-
tell you more, I can't,
Why not?
more specific.
I don't understand. I guess I don't I guess I don't understand. Do we not know whether or not the products are the same coming from all the bids?
They have to be there, they would be kicked out of the bid process, they
No,
wouldn't enter
no,
the
the-
review.
I'm trying
Does
to,
the bid
Bruce
depend?
is implying that the
Specific
bid asked
business.
for a product that does a certain thing. You're implying that we've asked for a specific product.
Yes, haven't we?
There are specifics, yes, they are
Yes.
very
So
specific.
that's what we're just trying to figure out.
In other words, Team A has got to provide us with Epson projectors, and Team B has to provide us with Epson projectors. They're
We
both the
just
same
said that.
projector, as opposed to Ford projectors and Mercedes
There are very
projectors.
specific, so for example.
We can wait till, we don't have to do this vote before Monday.
I thought we had to because of the
Well,
June.
Bruce said that, but I don't know why we have to, Bruce, sorry.
That's what Charlie said.
But why?
I don't know.
This
No,
is-
if you said, this is a thing that they vote on and
We
bids
voted
come in
to
after that,
approve the
right.
total money that we want to allocate
Right,
in
that's gonna be on there
capital for FY
regardless.
eighteen.
When we
So
pick-
they're gonna approve that budget Monday night, as well as hopefully the full budget for FY nineteen. And then we could ask to see the bid, so that we could actually see the specifics in the bid, so that we could look at that before we take the vote at our
Okay.
next meeting. It's 2 weeks away.
I
The
mean-
bids are usually good for 30 days, right? The price?
I believe, yes.
That's standard protocol.
That's standard.
Yeah.
So does-
But can I
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
give you one piece of information?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the minimum specs for the RFP that has not gone out yet. So I just want to give you an
Yeah.
idea of what some of the information is
Yeah.
in that. So for example, for the towers, the description is Intel Core i5-7500, this is out of my league.
Yeah.
Or AMD Ryzen Quad Core equivalent, 8 gigabyte RAM, 4 DIMM slots, 128 gigabyte SSD, 1 gigabit NIC, DVD, optical drive, Windows 10 Home. Now, that's Greek to me, a lot of
So,
that. So that's the level of specificity.
Right.
that
I'm
our
just saying, so
technical-
when I hear that, I'm thinking one company might be like, I can build those for you on the cheap.
Yeah.
And another company would be like, I can go to Microsoft and buy a product that has all that stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Off-the-shelf
two-
Dell versus
Two
like
different
custom-
products, same specs.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why that's what I'm trying to figure out, how one bid could be so much bigger. And I want to make sure that, I think we all want to make sure that we're getting something of comparable quality at least,
Right.
instead
And
of just going on the cheap.
And I wouldn't keep saying this, but it's only because that difference is
That's
so
so
huge.
high.
You know, and I'm a super nerd, so I know what these things
Yeah.
cost, right? So if the mayor's gonna say we don't have to vote on it, then I would rather wait
That's
until.
fine.
Dawn is,
Yeah.
Angela has Dawn on the phone.
All right, so I'm just gonna translate what
Can't you just put them on speaker?
Yeah, Dawn, can I just put you on speaker, and I'm gonna
Thank
put you
you.
here so that people can hear you?
John, for the record.
Don Skane, our IT administrator for the school district, is now
Making a guest appearance.
making a guest appearance via his
Location.
iPhone.
Okay, so Dawn
Don,
is.
can I have the last 4 digits of your social security number, just so I know it's you?
Is we picked a model that was the latest version of what went in K through 8, and asked to bid on that model. Other models were available. Anyone could bid any model that met those specs. But what and everyone bid pretty much the same model. There was one company that bid a different model, but it was a higher bid. It wasn't one of the lower ones.
Because it was a different model. I think, Brian, maybe you could ask,
Hi, Don. I'm just the difference between CDW and Connect Ed is so huge. Did CDW say, well, you want the Ford model, but we'll quote you the Mercedes one anyway? Is that why it's such a huge difference?
I didn't get that.
He missed out
He
Ford,
said that there was such
Mercedes.
a big difference between the CDW
And Connect Ed.
and Connect Ed.
Is it actually, did CDW ask or provide, hey, well, you were asking for A, but we're going to offer you B instead?
Yeah, he's asking if CDW went ahead and bid a different model than what you asked for, a higher model.
They did not. No, they did not. CDW offered the same model that Connection did, or Connection is their name now. But the big difference, there was a slight
Northeast.
difference in cost per projector. The difference in price, I believe, came down to the cabling and the labor.
Cabling and labor.
So that's not part of the electrical bid then?
no.
It's totally different. So electrical is just wiring
Just
for
electrical,
power.
not the
Right, you have to
installation.
do the cables too, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
So it was labor.
But the cables are part of it. Yeah.
It was good to know.
Good.
That's helpful. Thank you. That's really
Thank you.
helpful, Don.
Appreciate it, Don.
Thanks, Don.
It's always labor.
It's labor.
Oh, we're good.
We're good.
You were right.
Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you.
It's always
Does that
personnel.
help?
Yeah, because it was
Right.
presumably it was going to be under wire, but wiring was just electrical power wiring.
Right.
And this is all the rest.
So,
Are
are
we
we,
comfortable voting, or would we prefer to wait till after the city council votes on the capital plan
I think it's fine. I mean, if we know that it's because
of labor? Okay.
Right.
Okay, so everyone feels like their questions have been answered?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
I move to approve $87,821.54 for projectors for the high school for Connect Ed.
Second.
Discussion.
discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve the electrical low bid for $27,060 for the projectors at the high school.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
For Bass Electrical.
I guess it's BAS for Bass Electrical.
Thank you.
BAS Electrical. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Well, I feel illuminated.
Don't project your feelings on us.
Oh, come on, Nick.
You started it, Bruce.
I did.
Mass electric?
Bass.
All caps,
Yeah.
B-A-S, all caps.
Okay, thank you. I thought you had said mass electric. Oh, my.
They've been long gone. They've been long gone.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a new student activity, string camp, and I would turn that over to the superintendent.
You received this in your packets, description of a string camp that Jamie Sokolowski would like to start, and it would run from August 20th through the 23rd. And it's an opportunity to explore a string instrument with assistance from professional musicians. Beginner to intermediate students of violin, viola, cello, bass, and guitar players are welcome. So this is a new opportunity for our students. And I would entertain.
So, sure, we can entertain a motion. I have some questions, but is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the proposal for a string camp this summer.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Does anybody have any questions? I do.
Is just cover costs?
Is this what?
Just cover costs?
It covers, yes, yeah, it just covers costs, basically. It's $125 per student.
Curious.
So-
Okay.
So is this falling within the space rental policy, or is this a school-sponsored activity, therefore not subject to the facilities rental policy that we have?
It seems like a school policy, sponsored event.
I'm
because-
just clarifying.
I know.
That's a
Because
great question.
They're asking checks to be made out to the Knox Middle School.
Yeah.
If they were being made out to Jamie, then I would say that, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just run it through youth services? Is there a difference?
Say that?
Why wouldn't you just run it through youth services? Is it just different doing it separately, but like, like adding it to their summer program, and this is like what's being offered at the middle
Because
school?
their brochure is done in March.
Oh, okay. So this is like a late ad,
Yeah.
but typically is that what have happened?
It could, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Because we do band camp for the high school, for the marching band.
Yeah.
They do that every summer too.
And this is really, just let me talk a little bit about this. You need to remember that we didn't have a string program
Right.
Until 4 years ago.
Well, we did.
Just
We
returned.
did.
Yeah,
We
we
did.
had it.
We
Yeah,
did.
we had done away
Donna might
with
have been
it.
serving on the city
Right.
council.
But
that
it
picked
went
up.
away, and then
Right.
it came back. Jamie
Picking
resurrected
around.
it, and it's really taken off. So this is like, from my perspective, a really natural outgrowth out of the interest that we've had from our students that has really grown exponentially.
Mr. Cantor.
It's still on my policy wonk hat.
Okay.
Non-resident students?
It's only being I don't think that we would have non-resident students, Nick, because it's really being advertised through our schools.
When it comes to summer activities, word of mouth and what your friends are doing down the street has a lot to deal with as well. And that's why I'm asking, is it specifically for Knox students, or others would be welcome? And it might not be, maybe I shouldn't say non-resident students, it might be residents of Newburyport but who attend VIC or charter school.
Which
How
are
about that?
students. I think if there's
I don't know
space,
the answer to
right?
that.
If there's space.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to turn kids away if they were.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, that's
But
my.
she does say in part of her brochure, register early because space is limited, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure that,
And we give preference to Newburyport.
We certainly
students.
would,
Yeah.
she would certainly give preference to Newburyport students, for sure.
I think that both you and she should not take our questions as opposition.
No,
We
no,
just
no, I
clarify.
understand, no.
And I have a clarifying
They're
question.
they're very
Um,
helpful.
do we have an understanding that kids who want to attend but cannot afford to attend will be able to attend?
We do have accommodations through each of our schools for that. We have ways in which to do that. So yes, we can accommodate students who may indicate financial hardship.
I'm just wondering, I'm sure, because Jamie's great, but does it have to stop at kids entering 6? Like it won't go into 7 and 8? Because there's got to be kids that are slightly older than NOC who are at the 0 level or intermediate level, but she wants to keep it just the lower?
I think she probably does
Just
right now.
age-wise, probably?
I don't know the answer to that, Brian, but I can ask her
Okay.
why it's limited and let you know that.
But I also think this is the first time we're doing it, and
Yeah.
it may be that is what she feels is manageable. But if you could get that information to us, that is not going to preclude us from voting on this tonight, but
I think,
it's a good question.
I think I might be stating the obvious here, but it feels to me like this is a canary in saying that we really need to think about how to get more music instruction for our kids. Whether it's more teachers or more time with the teachers we already have, but I don't know if that's.
I'd like to say we've been doing that. I mean, I think we started with, little increments each year, 0.3, 0.2 as we could, but I think we really have been moving in that direction, and we're seeing more kids in band, more kids showing an interest in strings, and, the middle school jazz. I really do think that we've made some headway. And would I like more
That's the direction.
teachers? Yes.
Yes, yes.
But I'm really excited about the program they're doing down at the waterfront
Yeah,
next
no,
Saturday.
Yeah.
So I think there really is an effort to try and build our music programs.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I
I
think
know,
I'm
I
stating
think
the
it's
obvious. I think I'm
great.
stating
Yeah.
the obvious here,
Yeah.
but
One of the things that I particularly like about this program is that it is truly capitalizing on one of those resources that we don't capitalize on well enough, I think, in our schools yet, and that's a resource of time. It's taking advantage of downtime to still continue the educational process, and kudos to Jamie for coming up and doing this. I think it's a great idea.
is there a chance, just along this line of conversation, a little off on the vote, I know, but to stipend a music teacher to do like morning classes? I know like once a month kids get to go for lessons, but I'm thinking like to put a music or a United Arts special as think of it like a sports coach or something like that, where they teach a class in addition to the class day, if they'd be so interested, for kids to get some extra time. Right, if we think about band class the same way we think about PE, and then the coaches get kids afterwards at a stipend, could we see if our music teachers and/or, and I know her name's escaped me, Miss Gallegos does like an art club, but it would be great if there were more of those things that maybe if we could think about for next year's budget, or like a year and a half now for the budget, to think about art-based stipends to see if they wanted.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should think about it sooner than that, because we'll be going into contract negotiations, and stipends are always an item on the table.
Okay.
So we should definitely put some thought into it very soon. But I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a good idea, too. We have offered some flex scheduling that way in the past. We've looked at the music staff with a flex schedule where they actually started and they were offering instrument lessons before and after school.
Yeah.
And it varied their schedule during the school day. So we have looked at some of those options, and at times they were well attended, and other times, it depends on the season, when sports are running for the after-school things, but it's definitely something to explore.
Terrific.
And along the lines of music, the Waterfront Music Festival is on Saturday.
Saturday.
So, which I think is really
Good
going to,
weather.
is going to showcase our music programs across and
Theater
performing
and
arts.
visual arts.
Yeah.
And one other remotely attached to this too, we've been able to raise $11,300 towards the new uniforms.
The bands,
for high school
uniforms? Oh,
bands.
great.
Wow, great.
I know, thank you. Check came in for $5,000 from the bank today.
That's great.
So we're short still a few.
That was like
thousand.
iffy, right? Because they
I
weren't
know.
getting back to us about that? Okay.
Right, so we need 14, so we're almost there. So, very excited about this.
Is there I know you posted the link, was it you who posted the link last week?
Oh, to that,
To the
Waterback-
fundraiser?
the walk back in time.
Oh, was
They-
it a
they-
fundraiser? Is there?
It's connected though.
They gave me $2,500 last year towards the uniforms, and are willing to do it again this year. But I know that Steve Cohen has other things he needs for band besides just the uniforms. I'm trying to figure out another way to get.
I was just asking
Any,
if there was a link to a specific fundraiser, like
haven't done
a
that
donor's
yet.
choose or something like that.
No, I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
Should I do that? Is that a
I mean,
Should I do that? Is that a-
Yeah,
is that a thing
that
for
one, they've given
the
a lot of
balance?
money to it
Yeah,
already.
I
but
would admit, like, I
that's the
think-
one I shared.
You think I could raise it if I set up?
well, I mean, we've talked about this before, so I don't know if there's a thing, like, if you want to put up a donor's choose, that, I don't know if there's a thing against that.
There is.
I personally have no problems with it, but,
No, there's
Right.
an issue with my status doing that.
well, that's what I'm saying, so I don't know
Yeah,
if
so-
maybe the band teacher would do that. I don't know if we even were allowed to suggest that in public, but I know, like, teachers at my school, they just turn the donor's choose button on and stuff gets funded.
Yeah, we'd have to look at our policy.
The policy says they have to ask the superintendent.
It's at the discretion of the superintendent to remember the policy.
Could we explore that a little bit further? Because maybe we could raise that last couple thousand over the summer.
I mean, there was that one day last year that every Donors Choose project in America got funded by somebody. I forget who did it, but they just logged on. They funded everything.
That's right, I remember that.
Everything.
Yeah, we also, we could certainly advertise it on Saturday as well.
Well, that's so you could pass the hat on
Pass the hat,
Saturday.
yeah.
Like, seriously, we could pass the hat on Saturday. If we had a band hat to pass around.
One of those like cowboy hats, yeah.
No, yeah, whatever band hat we're using, like, fill the boot like the firemen do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I could blow up a picture of the uniform.
Maybe we can fill a tuba or something.
Oh, there you go. We could have a table at Yankee
If
Homecoming.
only we knew a tuba player that could come play.
Well, I couldn't do either one, nor do I have a tuba, but.
Good ideas. We have a motion on the floor. If we're finished discussing it.
In general?
Band camp, string camp.
String camp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Although we've had a preview of policy issues coming up during the meeting, I turn this over to Nick now.
Just remind you that we submitted for first reading a series of policies last week, and you have received them all via email. I encourage you, if you have not yet done that, some of you mentioned that you had some comments that you would want to make. I have not received any comments, so please get them to me so that next time when it officially comes up as a second reading, all of your comments will be incorporated and we can vote their approval. That's that for keeping it short.
That's really good.
Terrific, Nick.
That's
Thank you.
terrific. Retirements and new hires.
Those were included in your packet, and I just wanted to just share that information with you, and to give you an update on our progress in terms of hiring. We're doing really, really well.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the new assistant principal at the present?
I can. She is hopefully going to come to the last meeting in June, so you will have Ann Doble, you will have an opportunity to meet her. She has a very, very strong background in curriculum. I'm trying to remember all the details. She has done, she's currently a classroom teacher. She has taught a number of different grade levels in her career. She has done quite a bit of looping. What impressed the committee the most was her curricular knowledge and her ability to really talk about the way that she differentiates instruction. And the committee was very impressed with that. She has already spent a day at Bresnahan and has met a lot of the staff there and has spent time with both Christina and Amy. She has a little bit of STEM background. And she also has STEM background as well.
What was her name again? I'm sorry.
Ann Doble.
Doble?
Yes.
D-O-B-L-E. Doble.
And if you take just a look at the, I've listed the retirees, so you can see who is retiring. And we have included here in the new staff. You can see that we actually have hired for the majority of positions at this point, which is great, because we got out there early. And we've had really excellent candidates, I can tell you that. So we still have a grade 3 position, which is a 1-year leave of absence. We have the social worker at Bresnahan still to hire, that has been posted. We have the library position at Bresnahan as well, that is also, all of these positions have been posted. And I know Christina has, and her team have interviewed for the special education clerical, but I do not know if they have made a decision around that yet.
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason why the library position is the only one without a budgeted salary next to it?
I don't know the answer to that, David. I don't. My guess is it's an omission only.
Oh.
I can let you know what that is.
Okay, thank you.
What does December in parentheses mean?
I'm sorry, Donna, I didn't hear you.
Next to the professional staff, it says grade 6 in parentheses December.
Is he retiring in December? Is that his
Yes.
birthday?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's retiring.
He's retiring in
They
mid-year.
do that?
Oh,
They
yeah,
do.
right on their
It's based-
birthday,
yeah.
usually.
It's based on their birthday.
Okay. They don't do that anymore, they went to July 1.
Yeah, this is my first look at the retirement list, and I would say it's an all-star list
It
of
is.
people who have been
Yeah.
in this district a long time, and have, those of us at graduation heard a shout out to Mary Ellen Hoyseth in one of the graduation speeches from a graduating senior who's still in contact with her. So it's an impressive group of people who have been tremendously dedicated to the district.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
An update for you.
Good. School committee evaluation discussion. It's about that time when we do our self-evaluation. I don't want to I would like to actually ask Nick to talk a little bit about the school evaluation process and the sort of briefly the theory behind it and what we hope to do.
I think the theory behind it is an opportunity for us to take a look at not necessarily the achievements of the district, but how we operated as a committee, how we contributed to improving the educational experience for all kids. So that is the philosophy behind it. We try and take a look at how we did against our goals, which are typically aligned with the superintendent's goals. This year, I don't remember whether we ever approved
We didn't.
goals for the school year. I don't believe we did. So,
Do those typically come out of the retreat, I'm guessing?
yes,
Yeah.
since the retreat
Typically
didn't happen, I think that might be a partial reason for it, but I think as we go into our next retreat, we can certainly take a look at our goals, and if we can take a look at the broad competency areas that we've used in the past and evaluate ourselves against that and still try and draw some conclusions and comments, but we won't have the specific goals to evaluate ourselves against. So I think we can do a partial evaluation, I think we should, that takes a look at some of the general areas. And if you take a look at the goals as they are presented here in your packet, there are areas that I think are, we could use them pretty much as is to go back and take a look at ourselves. The beginning, curriculum assessment, assure the district has the direction and resources to meet community and state expectations and standards. I think that's still valid, even though we didn't officially state it as a goal in the retreat. I think that's something that we probably all have in the background with the kinds of things that we're doing, and we probably should evaluate ourselves on that anyhow. So my suggestion would be that we take these forms, work with them, comment as best you can. It's not a report that needs to be published to anybody. It's more internal for us to discuss. If we have comments on each of these areas from each of you before the retreat, I think it'll be valuable for us to have a discussion at that point with the new superintendent on board, to begin to have a jumping off point for our discussion of what we want to do for goals next year.
Thank you.
You have done so much work on policy. This is a lot of work for you. Are you still okay with putting all this together? I'm just asking because I know.
The book's published now, Donna. I've got time to
We still have another set of policies that we're looking at. But, so, do you give us a date that you could have this done for the retreat?
And if I could just jump in before you give us the date, because we have some people here who have not been through this process yet. Typically, we all individually answer the questions as best we can. Then we forward it to Nick. What Nick does is he tabulates how many people said improvement, and then captures every single comment. We capture every single comment. And then, once Nick has tabulated all of that, that gets redistributed to us in a public session, and we can have a conversation about that. But again, the goal is to sort of look at how we're operating. I think it's a great idea to try to get this done before the retreat, because it'll help us talk about goals and help us talk about issues. But we do capture all the comments, and we also come out with a rating of where do we stand, proficient, needs improvement, based on the individual school committee members' assessment of that.
It might be helpful to send last year's.
It came in the packet, right? Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
No,
this is just a template.
That's the template for us to work from, but if you send the results.
I can send the last one we did.
Because I think that would be very helpful to take a look at what we did last year. And you can see how we go through a year of school committee meetings and pull out information that would be the evidence provided to support the evaluation.
The only other thing I would say before we get a date is that if this format looks familiar, it should, because we based it on the state standards for teachers, for the administrators, for the superintendent, and now for the school committee. So I'm not sure if anybody else in the state is doing that, but
we did a presentation of this to I had to laugh when Kathy says, "Oh, I found a PowerPoint about that." And I said, "Yeah, I think I wrote that PowerPoint." We did a presentation on this to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees meeting, and there were a couple of districts that adopted our model. They really liked our approach to self-evaluation.
it just provides a really nice straight line between what we're expecting of staff and what we're expecting of ourselves. So date.
Date, so what is it, the 29th is when is the
31st.
retreat? 30th?
July 31st.
July 31st. Ooh, okay. Have plenty of time then. There it is, yeah, okay. So why don't we do, so we say the week of July 9th, Friday the 13th, that's a date that people will remember?
Sure.
That gives me a couple of weeks to pull it together.
For those who are new at this, if you have questions about what the evaluation standard we're sort of driving at is, talk to Nick or talk to me or Steve. You don't need to talk to us specifically about how you're going to answer that question, but if you have some questions about what it's asking, please feel free to do that.
Yeah, if you have, I don't know, a question on what how to rate impact on student learning. What do we think about there? Or, what does proficient mean versus exemplary versus needs improvement? All of those are defined, and we'll be happy to take you through. So please feel free to, there is a bit of a process where you go through the individual goals and then come back to your own overall evaluation of the school committee, your performance in it. Our performance as a group. Good.
Thank you.
Couple questions.
Sure.
Nick, you can send out a copy of this document,
Yeah.
right?
And
Type
work,
onto
you can
it and send
actually
it.
work on.
Yep.
Yes.
That's one. Sort of two related questions. Shouldn't we be writing our school committee goals at the summer retreat instead of the winter retreat, because it is a self-evaluation for the school year? So if we write them at the summer retreat?
Yep.
Okay. We had also talked at one point, I know we wanted to tie them to the superintendent's goals, but we also talked about trying to be specific with the language so that it's based on things that we actually have purview over.
That's right.
It's like, what are we actually doing to support those goals?
Yep.
And in relation to the ship with that, how do we work on getting superintendent's goals for next year in time? Like, that's one of the things Susan, right, we used to do with you around now, because they are due August, something? Right, so with Sean, like, do we have a process set up to get Sean's goals as he's walking in the door?
I mean, I think you want to look at his entry plan.
Right,
Yep,
and that's
yep.
gonna take till December.
No.
First year,
So it's
first year usually.
superintendent is a little bit different, you have to give them more
I
flexibility.
mean, you've got to give him some more time.
I mean, we gave him.
It's not me, I'm saying
Yeah.
the state's okay with us not, that, I guess that's what I'm asking. We always wanted them from you early because you said we had to hand them in.
Well, that was part of an evaluation.
Right.
We're not
So-
doing an evaluation.
Of Sean.
Not
Until
until
next year.
next June.
I understand that.
So,
Well,
no, go ahead, say it again.
Susan always told us that we needed to work on, like, hear her goals in June, because we had to hand them in to somebody, right, in August. So I'm saying, do we not have to hand goals in for Sean this summer? Go ahead.
What you're handing in August is the evaluation, the rating of the evaluation from the year before.
Oh, got it.
So that
At least
happens
was our
in
work,
early
not the goals.
August.
It
Okay,
actually
got it.
happens in
Okay.
July.
Based on the goals.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
actually July. They have to, the ratings have to be in by July. They do, be in by July. Judy has to enter in the ratings in
Yes,
July.
up by August 4th. But we receive them in
Okay.
July.
Yeah.
That's fine then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, thank you. STEM updates.
Yeah, I had such a fun morning this morning. I was at the Bresnahan. The Bresnahan's doing a little mini event for our pre-K and kindergarten students focused on STEM today and on Thursday. So if any of you find yourself available on Thursday and would like to go to the Bresnahan to visit some of the things that are happening, it's really great fun. So I started in the library where the students were working with Bebot robots, and they were learning how to program the robots to go forward, backwards, right, and left, and how to clear a cue that you'd put into the little robot. And they were very cute. They were running little competitions, and they learned how to do that. It was kindergarten students. Then I went on to a preschool classroom where the plant mobile was there, and the woman facilitating the lesson for the preschool students was adorable. She was acting out the growth of a plant from planting of the seed through immersion, and that's how she conducted the lesson. But then she very bravely brought over a big container of soil and little peat pots, and she had daisy plugs for each of the students, and each student planted their own flower, and there was really minimal mess. I thought, when she first brought them over, I thought, oh, we're just gonna have soil everywhere, but we didn't. They had a blast with that, and they planted their own flowers and talked about how to care for them, and they were taking their flowers home. And then the next class I went on to, they were working on the concept of gravity. And they started with some reading. They read a book that talked all about gravity. And then they built their own parachutes. And then they dropped their parachutes, and they compared the dropping of their parachutes to things that had more weight, like markers and pencils.
These weren't personal parachutes.
These were parachutes made out of tissue paper and pipe cleaners that they decorated and then flew around the classroom. But did a really nice job with the whole concept of gravity and why things, fall to the ground rather than float. And it was fun, and it was really fun to see our youngest students so engaged in the thinking process around putting these concepts together. So
is that an all-day event? Is there a time?
It is. It's an all-day event, and it's today and Thursday. So that was really fun. And then I also had, just for the Assistant Superintendent report, I've been busy reading summer curriculum project proposals that have come in. Thus far, I've received 28 proposals for summer curriculum work. And they really are spanning all grade levels in all content areas, and really some great proposals. So I think it's always very exciting to see the things that teachers are thinking about, the work they'd like to do when they have some concentrated time, when they can sit down and collaborate and either develop some new curriculum or to enhance and enrich the curriculum that they're currently instructing. So I'll let you know when we get those finalized, what they actually end up being, but we're in the process of refining right now, meeting with principals, talking with some of the teachers who have proposed those things, and we should have those all approved and back to teachers by the end of the week, so they can start planning their summer work.
Great, thank you. Superintendent's report.
Okay, I put kindergarten numbers on here because I am quite nervous about our kindergarten numbers. We have 7 sections of kindergarten. We made a determination not to go with 8, and currently we have 6 sections that are already at 18 and 1 section that is at 17, and we have not gone into the summer yet, and usually we get additional kids over the summer. Now, we can go up a couple of kids, but I just want to put that on your radar screen, that in fact, that it would be probably Sean would be coming to you and saying we may need to add another section of kindergarten if we get much higher numbers there. So I just want to, it was a calculated risk that we took, and at the time we were quite low, and it looked like we were going to be good with 7 sections, but our numbers have kept increasing. So I want you to be aware of that.
So that would require the hiring of another teacher?
It would require it, yes.
Do we have the classroom space?
Well, we'll have to create the classroom space, yes. And I'm not sure, Amy and I have a meeting scheduled later this week to discuss what that will look like, and I will let you know that next school committee meeting.
So just ask a question, over the last couple of years, what has been the numbers in the summer that have emerged?
It's been anywhere from like 5 all the way up to, I think, 12.
So 5 we could probably handle.
5 we could probably handle, 12 we could not.
Okay.
So, I will actually, when I meet with Amy, I will get I'll get the data on that and share that with you.
Okay.
So if we got 12 kids, it's 2 more in each class?
Yeah, it would be 2 more in each class. But we're already at 18, and that's typically, again, it's going to depend on also our ratio of special education students as well. That's a piece to all of this. So I will get some additional data and share that with members of the school committee. The other 2 other things that I wanted to, actually 3 other things that I wanted to mention. I did have an email today from Andrew Wolf, who was in the stands at graduation yesterday, and just said that he told me he was blown away by the quality of the student speeches, of which I was as well. They were absolutely
Excellent.
amazing, amazing. It also, I would just make an observation that in the 5 years that I have participated in graduation, I think this was the fullest I have seen the stands. You know, we were almost completely full. And
I would just add to that, that she's hard to miss, but I noticed Deb Zabo in the stands. And I ran into Deb later in the afternoon, and she was thrilled with the quality of the speeches, and that Molly had fulfilled her commitment to mention poetry in her speech.
I did find out that Susie Galvin, a former teacher at the high school, had gone in and worked with the students on their speeches and had volunteered her time, and really enjoyed doing that. So
They were terrific. Some of the best speeches, and I've been to the last 17.
Well, you could hear them too, which is important.
They
because we
were
never had the
phenomenal.
PA system before we, did the stadium, and there were times where you could, I would ask the students to send me their speeches because I couldn't hear any of it.
I would also like to comment on Sean Reardon's heroism in getting up out of his seat and replacing the plant that had blown over. He got up, he knew what to do
All in a
in a
day's
crisis. Thank you.
You know, access to the speeches actually aren't the worst idea. Not in advance, but after the fact, like we could post them, or it would be just a nice
Great idea, that would be.
website piece.
Not only would that be a good idea, but over time, we would build up a catalog of them that other students could refer to when they're writing their speeches.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, let me follow that up. Great idea.
Nick, you have a question?
I just have another graduation-related item that came up last night at a discussion amongst friends about the graduation, how well it had gone, the speeches, et cetera. And one of the parents said, and one of the things I mentioned to him is I was walking through the hallway, and walking by the guidance office, I was taking a look at all of the colleges that our students were going to. It's a very impressive list of colleges, not only the colleges themselves, but the locations. You have one student going to New Zealand, another one going off to The Hague. So our students are heading off internationally, and it's very impressive. The point that one of the parents made is, we should really get that list of colleges, even if it's not a complete or detailed one without names attached to it, out to the middle school parents, because those are the parents that at this point might be thinking of investing in private education.
That's a great idea.
And when you take a look at our record, I would compare it to any private school in the area. I would compare it favorably to any private school in the area. So I think this is an area where we can toot our own horn, and we should.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, but we used to see, the school committee used to get a list of the colleges that the kids were going to. And I think that, so.
I'll follow that up.
I thought that was a pretty cool map, like on the high school wall. I liked that.
Yeah.
It's another maybe just virtual image to share. But I actually brought that up with Sean in my meeting with him, like a little bit of marketing on the school, both at the pre-K level and at the 7th grade level.
Yep.
Because I know, like, my daughter's in 7th grade, we're starting to get stuff from schools.
Yep.
Because they're willing to market.
And they have
We should.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've got an incredibly good product to sell.
Two other things for me, just, again, Mike touched on it yesterday in his address in terms of how successful our scholarship night was. And again, we did a new format this year, which overall got great reviews from the people participating. All of the memorial scholarships, students were invited to come and meet with the presenters from 6:30 to 7 o'clock, so they actually could hear something about the person who the scholarship was named in memory of, and they got to talk with members of the family in most cases. So that was from 6:30 to 7, and then the actual handing out of the rest of the scholarships went from 7 on. And a night that used to go until about 9:30 was done, we were done by 8 o'clock. And it was just really, really, the whole night was really well done. And I mean, it started off on such an amazing note with the ROTC scholarship, which was, with everything included in it, was $158,000, and they gave out 2 of them. So that was pretty amazing. It was a pretty amazing way to start the night off. So it was very, very well done, and I think that the format that was established is just a great format, and I know that they want to continue that moving forward. So it was.
How long have they been doing that, like having a night like that?
Oh, scholarship night?
I mean, they didn't have it when I was in school. That's why I'm asking. So, now, we used to find out during practice, they'd read them for the first time, like the Thursday of graduation week, and they'd read them out while we were like sitting in the stands,
And then
like sitting in the seats.
Before that, they used to do it at graduation. So
Oh, that was the first time? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot more sunburn.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but
Yeah.
I was just curious.
It's been a long time. And then lastly, I just want to, you will be getting formal invitations, but on June 15th at 12:30, the Newburyport Choral Society is going to be dedicating, along with working with our students at NOC, they're holding a chestnut tree commemoration, and it's tied into the Holocaust unit, and there is a commemorative bench, and this, the reason that it's a chestnut, a horse chestnut tree, is that was the tree that Anne Frank looked out upon in the courtyard. And so they have planted a chestnut tree, and there is a memorial bench that is on the NOC grounds as well, and they're going to have a celebration on June 15th at 12:30, and in the event of inclement weather, it will move inside, but otherwise it will be outside. And the students, there's a group of students who have really been the ones who are making decisions around this and are organizing this event, along with Penny Lazarus and Deb Zabo and a few other folks. So if you can make it on the 15th, you will get a formal invitation, but I wanted to just give you a heads up.
Terrific. Subcommittee reports. Joint Ed met. We had a lengthy conversation about the projectors, sort of comparing notes as to what everybody understood. Everybody had a different understanding. And marijuana. We discussed marijuana and the regulations that the city is considering. There will be on June 19th at 7 p.m., I believe, at the NOC, a community forum, and sort of they have some panels. It's an opportunity, I think, to ask questions and try to get some answers. It's not intended to be a debate on the pros or cons of it, but just the reality of it being available in the community and what that means. Schools will be participating along with youth services and a number of other groups.
The first reading of the ordinance at their last meeting last week, where they approved 100,000 square feet for cultivation in the business park, and one primary building is 86,000 square feet. And so that means for potentially one other smaller cultivation site. They will do a second reading on this coming city council meeting Monday night, and they voted the first reading to put a moratorium on retail because they can't decide where they want, or if they want retail in the city. They were looking at Story Ave and the traffic circle, and some of the councilors felt that their wards were being heavily targeted versus others, but they tend to have more of the retail shop sectors than others. So that has that's one that people are pushing out a little bit. And it looks like from the last week we had a meeting by the 3 members of the Cannabis Commission, KP Law, and came and spoke to mayors and managers and in Amesbury at their senior center and talked about, sort of ran through the timelines and where we are in the state in terms of rolling all of this out. Because as you know, licenses are actively being reviewed at this juncture. If you would like, I can send you the slides from that presentation. It was really good, just to give you sort of an overview of where the Cannabis Commission is at this point. So I'll send those out tomorrow to all of you so that you have an idea of where we are. I think one of the pieces is that there is the opportunity for us to raise substantial revenue with marijuana cultivation, medical, medicinal, and they call it adult use. So is the language that the Cannabis Commission is using at this juncture. So.
Two other things that we learned from the conversation were that Charlie Tantar has been talking to people in Amesbury, and they anticipate about $1 million in revenue once their retail shops are open. And the other thing is that there are, I think, 4 main purposes for which that money can be used, with the top purpose being education. So there's a whole conversation yet to be had about.
They didn't say that though at the Cannabis.
Well, I was just sharing what Charlie shared with.
Yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily. It has to have a nexus somehow. That's clear. And but I agree that being able to continue the prevention work that's been happening with the Beacon Coalition and some of the other pieces, but that will come out of the host agreement. That will be decided, and I think everybody should have input into those. But I didn't hear that being the top one, but there has to be a nexus.
Okay. Finance?
We're due to meet next Wednesday.
Policy?
This coming Wednesday?
13th.
Okay.
Yeah, next Wednesday.
We haven't met. You have any of your comments?
You can take a break.
CIE?
So we met last Wednesday, and we had a great conversation about the new social studies standards and what that would entail and what the shifts were, and it brought up a lot of good conversations of there's going to be civic learning engagement at every grade level, and I think from that, we're all going to have some pretty good conversations with Sean coming in about ways we'd like to see those going forward. Particularly, I think, with the school committee as well. I think we had some good ideas that we talked about.
Great, thank you. There will not be an executive session tonight. So I will entertain.
I just would like to follow up on the request that was made to us for the letter in support. Would it be all right if it was signed by Bruce and I? This is just a sample letter that someone wrote to, Senator Spoke of the chair, and we would obviously write our own letter in support of this, but would it be all right if Bruce and I signed on behalf of the committee instead of trying to track down?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thank
So it's the
you.
will of the committee that we are going to endorse this.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get the letter written and sign it. Now I'll have to entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.